The moment the wedding doors opened, everyone turned to look at the lonely man standing at the entrance. He was dressed in a simple old suit, holding a small gift bag in one hand and trying to hide the pain in his eyes. People smiled at happy couples walking inside, but nobody noticed the single father standing there, wondering if he even belonged. Then, from across the crowd, a voice suddenly shouted, "Look at me," and the entire room went silent. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of a good heart, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel Heart Kindness Tales. The man's name was Kieran Vale, a father who had learned how to survive without expecting anyone to save him. For the last 6 years, his life had been centered around one person only, his little daughter, Maribel. After losing his wife in a tragic accident, Kieran had become both a father and a mother, trying to fill a space that could never truly be replaced. Every morning, before the sun rose, Kieran prepared breakfast, packed Maribel's school bag, fixed her hair, and made sure she left home with a smile. Then he would rush to his job at a small repair shop, where he spent long hours fixing broken machines because fixing his own broken heart was something he still hadn't figured out. People around him often told him he was strong, but they never saw the nights when the house became too quiet. They never saw him sitting alone at the kitchen table, looking at an old photograph of his wife and whispering that he was trying his best. The wedding invitation had arrived unexpectedly. It was for his neighbor, Sienna Rowan, a woman who had lived next door for years. She had always been kind to Kieran and Maribel, bringing homemade food when they were sick and checking on them during difficult times. She knew the struggles behind his tired eyes, even when he pretended everything was fine. At first, Kieran didn't want to attend the wedding. He looked at the invitation for days, placing it on the table and moving it away again. He imagined walking into a room full of happy couples and families, knowing he would be standing alone. He remembered the last wedding he attended. It was his own. He remembered his wife's laughter, the way she held his hand, and the promise they made to stay together forever. Now, years later, he would enter another wedding without her beside him. But Maribel noticed the sadness on his face. She walked into the room holding a drawing she had made. It was a picture of her and her father standing together under a bright sun. She told him that her mother always said life was meant to keep moving, even after the hardest storms. Those simple words touched Kieran deeply. He realized that avoiding happiness because of his pain would only teach his daughter to fear life. So he decided to go. On the day of the wedding, Kieran stood in front of the mirror wearing the only formal suit he owned. It was slightly outdated, and the sleeves were not perfect, but he cleaned it carefully. He looked at himself and saw a tired man who had survived many battles. For a moment, he almost changed his mind. But then he saw Maribel's drawing beside the mirror. He smiled, put the gift in his hand, and walked out. When he arrived at the wedding venue, the place looked like something from a dream. The garden was filled with flowers, soft music, and people laughing. Couples were taking pictures, families were hugging, and everyone seemed to have someone beside them. Kieran slowly walked in alone. At first, nobody noticed him. He found a quiet seat at the side and watched the celebration from a distance. He clapped when the bride and groom entered, and he smiled when everyone cheered. But deep inside, he felt invisible. He saw fathers dancing with their daughters. He saw husbands looking at their wives with love. He saw memories he once had and wondered if he would ever feel that kind of happiness again. Then something unexpected happened. A few guests started whispering. They weren't being cruel, but Kieran noticed their curious looks. Some wondered why he came alone. Others looked surprised that he was sitting by himself. He lowered his head, hoping not to attract attention. That was when Sienna, the bride, saw him. She had known Kieran for years. She knew the sacrifices he made, the way he worked endlessly for his daughter, and the loneliness he carried quietly. She walked toward him, but before she reached him, someone else noticed. A woman from the crowd, someone Kieran had never met before, looked at him with sadness. She saw the way he sat alone while everyone else celebrated. Suddenly, she stepped forward and shouted, "Look at me." The music stopped. Everyone turned. Kieran looked up in confusion. The woman walked toward him and smiled warmly. She told him that for years she had watched people ignore quiet struggles because they were too busy looking for loud stories. She said that sometimes the strongest people in the room were the ones sitting silently, carrying invisible pain. Kieran didn't know what to say. The woman pointed at him and said that everyone should look at him, not because he was alone, but because he was proof that love could survive even after loss. The room became emotional. People who had never known his story suddenly understood. Sienna came beside him and took his hand. She told everyone that Kieran was not just a neighbor. He was the man who helped others while fighting his own battles. He was the person who fixed broken things all day, then came home and raised a child with endless love. Kieran tried to stay strong, but his eyes filled with tears. For years, he believed people only saw what he had lost. That moment made him realize someone finally saw what he had become. A father. A survivor. A person who never stopped loving. The wedding